You are listening to Fika with Vicky on United Public Radio, 107.7 and 105.3 from New Orleans.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika with our returning guest, author Thea Prothero. Yay! Okay. And me, your host, Vicky Benison. The last time Thea was on Fika to discuss her book, A Guide to Pilgrimage, from Moon Books Publishing, we discovered a mutual passion for Christmas ghost stories. There's a bright, beautiful picture of you want me to mention that now? A Guide to Pilgrimage. I was gonna wait. You're very eager. We discovered a mutual passion for Christmas ghost stories, and this episode was born. Of course, Thea has been consciously celebrating this much longer than I have. But growing up, my family would watch the 1951 version of The Christmas Carol with Alistair Sims every Christmas Eve. And so, without knowing it, I feel like I was a part of the tradition as well. Now, Thea is writing her own Christmas ghost stories, and she's going to read aloud part of The Christmas Card, inspired by M.R. James, the Mezzotint. Thank you for sharing your stories with us, Thea, and welcome to Fika.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's nice to be back.
And
Especially
we're not echoing.
Dark time of the year.
Yes, the perfect time of the year for ghost stories. I mean, we can claim most of the year now. There's campfire ghost stories, there's Halloween, and then there's Christmas ghost stories. So as it gets darker, we can sit about our fires or like buy new houses with fireplaces in them and enjoy that. So what drew you to Christmas ghost stories particularly?
I was thinking about this, and I think it goes back to when I was a child. I remember buying my mum an anthology of horror stories for Christmas. I think that is the very first time I ever really thought about horror ghosts association with Christmas. And of course, everybody knows A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, which I think every year we watch that religiously on Christmas Day or around Christmas Day, and there was always new versions of it. There's musicals and everything about A Christmas Carol, isn't there? So that, I mean, although it's a tale about redemption, it's still got ghosts in it, which is always quite cool, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. And then, sorry.
No. I was just going to say, and I just wanted to mention once again, I've done this before. For all the indie writers out there, remember, Charles Dickens, nobody would publish this story. He just went and did it himself. And look where it's gone. Okay. He wanted the money. Thea. He needed it.
And from that, when I was a child, when I was a child, they used to repeat a program called Ghost Story for Christmas, which was presented every Christmas Eve by the BBC. And in it, they had various stories, including The Signalman by Charles Dickens, which is one of the great ghost stories, along with, of course, M.R. James, the greatest ghost story writer. They started with "Oh Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad," which was released in about 69, I think, which got a very good audience rating. And then from there, from about 72, they did it annually. And lately, of course, Mark Gatiss, the wonderful Mark Gatiss, has revived the tradition. And every Christmas we get a ghost story, which I know me and quite a few of my friends and quite a few people on Facebook and everywhere else readily wait with bated breath to hear. And also, when I was a child, I don't know if readers might be aware of Susan Cooper, the author. She wrote A Dark is Rising. I've actually got my edition of A Dark is Rising, The Dark is Rising, which is a story about a young boy who, at the winter solstice, which is around about the 21st of December, he has to try and save the world by bringing the light back. Well, I'm kind of paraphrasing the story, but it's written in a very folkloric way, and there's many mythical beings in the story, and I highly recommend it if you haven't read it.
I haven't read it. Who was the author again?
It's Susan Cooper, is the author. She's lives in America now. She's British, but she lives in America. There's a whole series of these stories, but this one was the first one, and it really inspired me to look beyond the normal Christmas cheer to other things, to the mythology, the folklore, and of course the ghost stories. That's really how I got into it.
From a book, an anthology you bought for your mother. So obviously she liked books and that encouraged you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, she was always a big horror fan, so I think I kind of caught that off her, really.
But it is a lot of people now. This is not as well known on here in North America. I don't think when I talk to people about it, they tend to give me strange looks, like, "What are you talking about now, Vicky?" And I was looking into some of the reasons why that was. And they suggested, well, some of the suggestions, people, I don't know for sure, I wasn't there, but some of the suggestions was that when people went to the new land, they wanted to leave what they felt were the old ways behind.
Mm.
Others were that when the Puritans came over, they were like, no, nothing of this nature is going to go out there. And also that the ghost stories got switched to Halloween because
Mm.
the Irish and
Hmm.
northern British people that came over brought those traditions, but it was all pushed in with Halloween, the
Yeah.
Samhain and stuff. So this is something we need to grasp, people. We need to move forward. Grasp this Christmas Eve ghost story thing. Now,
Mm.
you have lots of different authors, but one of the ones that inspired you most was M.R. James.
Yeah, yeah. He's probably, well, I would say he's probably the greatest ghost story writer. I expect a few people might argue about that, but um he every Christmas Eve he used to go to a club in his university called the Chit Chat Club, and he used to present a story to his friends, and it was always a ghost story. Um, so we've got that connection already. We've got the connection from him with Christmas, presenting a story. His stories have a whole genre named after them, Jamesian ghost stories. So um, yeah, I mean, I think probably my favourite of M.R. James's story is the one you've mentioned, the mezzotint, and the story I'm going to read later is kind of based upon it. So I write a ghost story every Christmas, and I always try to base it loosely around one of M.R. James's stories, because I think I like that connection. I like to connect with him and with the past and with the tradition of ghost story writing that he sort of
Mhm.
reintroduced, I think, in the early 1900s. So, mm,
And the interesting thing I found, okay, there is a very good I think it's very good, a documentary on YouTube that has Mark Gatiss.
Mark Gatiss, yeah,
Mark Gatiss on it, sort of showing us through his life. And it was quite an academic. So when it came,
hmm,
he focused on the architecture and things of
mm,
that time quite clearly. So, and the myths and things he had
mm,
a handle on because he had that information. So
yeah,
here he was, this big academic, and he wrote his ghost stories and shared his ghost stories because he loved them
yeah.
so.
Well, yeah, I think originally it was just for pleasure. He used to tell them, which is kind of it's a nice thing to do, isn't it? Just sit around and tell a story. I think that probably goes back a long way in the world, going sitting down in the darkest time of year and telling stories and sitting around a fire. And also, if you think about it, when you reflect at midwinter, you might reflect on the people, not only the good things that have happened, but the people you've lost and the things that the darker side of things. In the dark times, you might think of the darker side of things, which I think leads pulls into the tradition really well.
Definitely. There was a humorous Jerome Jerome, what I didn't write down his name. And he said, whenever 5 or 6 English-speaking people meet around a fire, they start telling each other ghost stories. And I think that has happened since the beginning of time. There was that.
Mm.
We don't know what's out around us. All we can see is the light of the fire, because and that leads, well, let's just think about when you're walking outside in the dark, how your imagination starts to flutter at every little noise. But at least you can go home and turn the lights on. They could never
Yeah.
turn the lights on, Thea. It was always so their imagination had a long way to roll. Robin says A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens is my favorite Christmas ghost story. And I think
Hmm.
that's probably for everyone as well. If you go, because times may be hard for some people this year, if you go on the Gutenberg Project, you can get all of Charles Dickens stories. And there's one that has 5 of his classic Christmas tales in it. One
Hmm.
being The Signal Man, which is very, very eerie. Like, I don't
Mm.
know,
It's an excellent, fantastic story. Yeah.
yes. And one of the things that I read about Dickens is that some people's opinions is that, there was always a morality lesson there. So
Mm.
the
Yeah.
true idea of Christmas still shone through, like, be kind,
Mm.
give to people who need it,
Yeah.
you know, be an uncle to Tiny Tim. But when I read the Christmas Carol for the first time, I was really thrilled by his way of writing. Like, the first part
Mm.
of that book is just very down to earth, and like he's talking to you all about, his Christmas. And so, yes,
Yeah.
they all
I was
have
just gon-
their things. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, would you like me to read a bit of the story? Because I've got it
Yes, yeah.
marked.
Okay, okay.
I've got it marked because I have my copy here, and I
Yay.
was see my copy Christmas Carol.
The ghost of
Not that
Ghost
way,
of
that way.
Christmas presents.
The bit I marked was the bit when Scrooge has gone back to his lodgings, and he's already seen the door knocker with Marley, who is his partner, who's dead, his face on it, and he's sitting after eating his dinner, saying "Bar humbug! I don't believe in anything." And it's the point where Marley's ghost appears to him, which I think is really powerful. The way Dickens writes it. So I thought I'd read a little bit of that. It's about a page or so, if that's all right with you.
That's fine with me. And Robin is the one that said he likes to hear the authors read. So this is for you,
Oh,
Robin, from your favorite Christmas ghost story.
okay. So the cellar door flew open with a booming sound, and then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards the door. "It's humbug still," said Scrooge. "I won't believe it." His colour changed, though, when without a pause it came on through the heavy door, and passed into the room before his eye. Upon its coming in, the dying flame leapt up, as though it cried, "I know him, Marley's ghost!" and fell again. The same face, the very same. Marley, in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights, and boots, the tassels on the latter bristling like his pigtail, and his coat skirts, and his hair upon his head. The chain he drew was clasped around his middle. It was long and wound around him like a tail, and it was made, for Scrooge observed it closely, of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, could see the two buttons on his coat behind. Scrooge had often heard it said that Marley had no bowels, but he had never believed it until now. No, nor had he believed it even till now, though he looked at the phantom through and saw it standing before him, though he felt the chilling influence of its death-cold eyes, and marked the very texture of the folded kerchief bound around its head and chin, which wrapper he had not observed before, he was still incredulous, and fought against his senses. "How now?" said Scrooge, caustic and cold as ever. "What do you want with me?" "Much," said Marley, "no doubt about it. Who are you?" "Ask me who I was." "Who were you, then?" said Scrooge, raising his voice. "You're particular, for a shade," and he was going to say "to a shade," but substituted it as it seemed more appropriate. "In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley." There you go.
There you go. Well, Robin says, thank you. He said, well, thank you
That's
so
all right.
much. And Dave says, for some reason, this sounds so much better read with someone with a English accent. Thank you. And I think it's, well, because we hear all these stories, the actors and actresses have English accents because, you know, it was set in England. So that makes perfect sense. So thank you. Did you have any other passages marked along
I've
the
only
way?
got that one part. I've only got that one marked in A Christmas Carol because obviously people need to read it.
They do. They do need to read it, and they can once again read
or
it free,
watch it, or watch it on the telly,
or
or
watch
something.
it. I
Yeah.
wanted to mention also on YouTube. Well, we'll get to those ones, but a lot of the 1970s, 1980s, A Ghost Story for Christmas from BBC are on YouTube, so
Mhm.
you can go spend time. Not to mention a lot of stories narrated by some really good voices out there, and you can find a lot to keep you entertained. Also, you know what? The people this I got this I got at a garage sale for like 50 cents. And I
Wow.
was like, "Whoa, okay, we're getting this." So you can find lots of these anthologies. I don't know why people just they don't value
Mm.
them when people leave
Yeah.
us or whatever, but hopefully there was no ghost attached to it. But
Haunted book.
that's a whole new idea. That's all I
Oh,
need.
let's not go down the conjuring route.
But you know, there's stories. Jerome K. Jerome said that. Thank you, Jerome. In After Supper, his Christmas book, story After Supper. So he's the one that said whenever 5 or 6 English speaking people meet around a fire, that I did. There's Charles Dickens. There's Barry, J.M. Barry. There's a lot of people here, but I'm just grabbing Robert Louis Stevenson. So a lot of
Oh yeah.
people
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
have gotten into this thing. So going so where we okay. Mark, I'm just so excited. There's so many ways to go with this. So Mark Gatiss,
Mhm.
which we does the BBC ghost stories for Christmas now,
Mhm.
and those you need to purchase on DVD, which is extremely understandable because I saw a couple trailers and they're
Okay.
really good. They're really fantastic
Mhm.
quality. For those who don't know who he is, he was Mycroft on Sherlock Holmes from 2010 to 2017, and I can't believe that show was on so long ago because I feel like it
I
was
know.
just yesterday. And he was Frank Renfield in Netflix's 2020 miniseries Dracula. So he is
Yeah.
very much into
Amazing.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, into this kind of
Mm.
thing, and he has a lot of videos out there expressing his passion for supernatural, ghostly, monstery type stories. So anything you see on YouTube with him attached to it is good stuff. Like you can pick things up at the garage sales. You can download things from the Gutenberg Project. You can find a way to get these Christmas ghost stories into your life.
Mm. Yeah.
Definitely, no matter what.
Mm.
Now, did you? How long is the mesotint? Do you have it there?
The story, the mistletoe.
Yeah, it's not that long, is
Let me
it?
look. No, I've got it marked in my book. Let's have a look. It's maybe about 10 pages, I think.
Okay.
Let's have a look. No, it's about 15 pages long.
Okay, and that last one was like 1 page. I just don't want you to get too dry before reading your story. So, could you read us like the opening page to get them into what we're doing today? Is just reading parts of things so that you have to go and read them yourself. Would you do that?
Sure, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. So this is The Mesotint by M.R. James. Some time ago, I believe I had the pleasure of telling you the story of an adventure which happened to a friend of mine by the name of Denniston during his pursuit of an object of art for the museum at Cambridge. He did not publish his experiences very widely upon his return to England, but they could not fail to become known to a good many of his friends, and among others the gentleman who at one time presided over the art museum at another university. It was to be expected that the story should make a considerable impression on the mind of a man whose vocation lay in lines similar to Denniston's, and that he should be eager to catch any explanation of the matter which tended to make it seem improbable that she'd ever be called upon to deal with such an agitating emergency. It was, indeed, somewhat consoling to him to reflect that he was not expected to require the ancient MSS, which means manuscript, his institution, that the business of the Shelburton Library, the authorities of that might, if they pleased, ransack obscure corners of the continents for such matters. He was glad to be obliged at the moment to confine his attentions to enlarging the already unsurpassed collection of English topographical drawings and engravings possessed by his museum. Yet, as it turned out, even a department so homely and familiar as this may have its dark corners, and to one of these Mr. Williams was unexpectedly introduced. Those who have taken even the most limited interest in the acquisition of topographical pictures are aware that there is one London dealer whose aid is indispensable to their researches. Mr. J.W. Britnell publishes at short interviews very admirable catalogues of a large and constantly changing stock of engravings, plans, and old sketches of mansions, churches, and towns of England and Wales. These catalogues were, of course, the ABC of his subject to Mr. Williams, but his museum already contained an enormous accumulation of topographical pictures. He was a regular rather than a copious buyer, and he rather looked to Mr. Britnell to fill the gaps in the rank and file of his collection than to supply him with rarities. Now, in February of last year, there appeared upon Mr. Williams' desk at the museum a catalogue from Mr. Britnell's emporium, and accompanying it was a letter from the dealer himself. The letter ran as follows: Dear Sir, we beg to call your attention to lot 978 in our accompanying catalogue, which we should be glad to send upon approval. Yours faithfully, J.W. Britnell. To turn to number 978 in the accompanying catalogue was with Mr. Williams, as he observed to himself, the work of a moment, and in the place indicated he found the following entry: 978, unknown. Interesting mezzotint. View from a manor house early in the century. 5 by 10 inches, black frame, £2 and 2 shillings.
And that is, yay, Thea. And that is, she did that cold, people. And that's not easy. Because there's so much influx in a sentence that changes the meaning and where you take a breath. And so well done. But that is a perfect example of James's writing, because you can see that academic there, but then
Yeah.
it takes because I think they said that like most of his protagonists are young men in academics. He sort of
Yeah.
used
Yeah.
himself
Yeah.
as the basis, as we all do. It has that very real, I can reach out and touch this. And then it takes all these bizarre corners that you don't want to touch, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so Robin said that was lovely. Now,
Thank you, Robin.
since Thea has done so many tricks for us already today, I want to just take this moment to give a real obvious, good old-fashioned plug. At this moment, do you have your paper there? As we speak, Moonbooks Publishing is doing a 50% off their ebooks. So if you go to the link that is there, I'll pop it up. I tried to pop it up yesterday, but the pretty picture didn't come up on Facebook. So I want to do it again with the pretty picture coming up. I have no idea what's going on with that. You go to, where are we going? The collective
Collectiveinksbooks.com.
Okay, collectivelinkbooks.com. Click add to basket for direct or download. Click on your shopping basket. Okay, so go there and it'll tell you what to do, basically.
Yeah, pick the
and
book.
you can, yeah, and Thea's book is like, I think it's like going to only be like $3.49 for
Yeah, I think so. It's
my
probably
country.
less
Yeah,
than a
so
cappuccino at Starbucks, isn't it? That
right.
I
I mean,
think,
most
yeah.
things are less than a cappuccino at Starbucks, but
Oh, okay. I was trying to sound good then.
no. I wasn't talking about the price of your book. I was talking about the price of the cappuccinos. Okay, but I would pay it right now. I actually think I want one. And this, I will tell you, I have read, as I read all the books, A Guide to Pilgrimage. And this book would be the perfect Christmas gift for yourself, or holiday gift for yourself, or you will gift for yourself, however you want to go with this. Because in January, you can read it. And Thea takes us away to some different historical places that she's pilgrimaged to. And it can make you think about what is important to you and where you would like to pilgrimage. So if you're starting off the year going, what am I going to do with 2025? You can get Thea's book for less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks and begin to plan. Well, if you're where I am, the snow is blowing outside, or maybe it's raining and cold, or you could be in the other half of the world where it's sunny and you're sitting on the beach and you want to read something, whatever. Check out Thea's book, and also a lot of the other guests that are on here. Rachel Patterson, Daniela Samina, Mark Niekamp. Now I feel like
Andrew
if I leave
Anderson.
somebody out, I'm a awful. What's that?
Andrew Anderson, my
Andrew
friend.
Anderson
Andrew Anderson.
hasn't been on here yet, but Andrew, if you're out there, I would like to talk to you sometime. There's
Loads of
Irisanya
people.
Moon, Luke Eastwood, just everybody, just go in there and buy one book from each author.
But
Okay.
just buy all of them. You know, you can probably get all of them for less than $100.
At those prices, yes. And what a deal. So, okay, I'm going back now. How often do I do that to you guys? All right, so Thea has her own ghost story being published soon
Hmm.
through a ghostly company, which is a literary group that discusses ghost stories, and
Yeah.
whether that be M.R. James or I have a list, but you can find that list for yourself. And as well
Hmm.
as that, they publish once a year an anthology, or they call a journal, of Christmas ghost stories. And Thea's story is going to be in there.
Yep.
So, do they have a Facebook page too that people can check out?
Yes.
Just
Yeah. If you look at a ghostly company, they should come up, and then you can click on all the links from that and find them online and everywhere else. Um, they also do something quite interesting, actually. They do something called a black pilgrimage every year, where they go to a place that's associated with ghosts. Or this year they went to Whitby in Yorkshire, which has an association with Dracula. As you probably know, the Demeter ship um,
mhm.
was swept onto Whitby Beach. So every year they have the Dracula Society have a big festival, I suppose you could call it, and a ghostly company did their black pilgrimage there and had some talks. It's a bit like a conference. They had some talks, met, and everybody met and socialized. It was really nice.
And
Um,
have you ever been able to go to one of them?
no, not yet. Usually,
Is it
because
is it
I
a
tend.
dream to go to one of them?
Maybe it depends, because of my schedule and everything is always so hectic. I've never managed to find the time to do it yet, but maybe next year. You never know.
But you're finally having a family holiday year this year, so that is good. Are you still having
Hmm.
your Christmas family holiday?
Oh yeah, yeah. We're going away at Christmas. Yeah, we're going to Wales.
So um, no, lovely, lovely, and it's good to have time to spend with loved ones.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, even though we have been encouraging reading and watching those ghost stories and just getting that tradition in your life, the easiest and cheapest thing to do is to write. Well, maybe not the easiest, but write your own ghost story and share it with, the family as you sit on Christmas Eve. If you don't
Mm.
have a fireplace, a Christmas tree will do. Um, if you don't have a Christmas tree, then God bless you. I'm sorry. That Christmas carol just came into my head.
God
If you
bless
haven't
us,
got a
everyone.
halfpenny.
Yeah.
um, so so you, Thea,
Hmm.
it evaded me for a minute. What do you pull out of yourself to write a ghost story? Where do you think is the best part for people to start?
Um, my personal practice of writing um, ghostly stories is, which may sound slightly obvious and may sound a bit strange. I don't know which, is I like to sit in the dark and write ghost stories. So not completely in the dark, or I wouldn't be able to see, but I like to sit with subdued lighting, say maybe a candle, or if you early in the morning when it's dark and you've got a little bit of light, I like to sit and write with without artificial light as much as possible, because I think it really draws you in. I think to write a ghost story at this time of year, you need to go quite inverted inwards to find the sort of darkness within yourself to write these stories. I'm probably going down a hole here, but
Well,
um,
no, you'd have to pull something out, a really sad
yeah,
memory, or
yeah,
or
maybe, yeah,
because a
maybe,
lot of them.
maybe, yeah. I mean, inspiration can be anything, can't it? I mean, walking down an alleyway at night and you hear a sound behind you could be the start of your story. I mean, maybe you could draw something out of that. Maybe you could find out who was walking behind you, or whether it was actually anybody at all. Maybe it was footsteps of a ghost, or a monster, or anything. I mean, there's so much literature about that can inspire people to write ghost stories, especially this time of year. And I would include Halloween in that as well, because it is this same time of year, really, isn't it? Perhaps not quite as dark, but
But it's starting
there's
to.
so
This
much
whole
there.
And a
Mm.
lot of people just don't like this, but I love this time of year because
Yeah,
of
me
ghost
too.
stories. Because it's the best time to have a fire, even outside, because there's that
Yeah.
little brisk and feeling, and you can have hot chocolate, and
Mm.
it's just the most wonderful time of the year. So,
I think it's what the Scandinavians called hygge, isn't it? Where they light the candles and bring in all the comforts, which is lovely, isn't it, this time of year? Although I still think it's nice to go outside and enjoy a bit of the cold weather if you get cold weather.
it is. It's I like it, as I pointed out, when the snow, it's not affecting the driving. But no, there's,
Yeah.
there's skating, there's tobogganing, there's
Mm.
no, actually, the ghost stories are not making people gloomy. A lot of people love their ghost stories and it makes them happy. But you can also go out and get that vitamin D with skating and tobogganing and
Mm.
then come in.
Yeah.
I just think that's the perfect day. Go tobogganing, grab your fire and your hot chocolate, and then have your ghost stories. And this is the perfect day. We should all live such a day.
De-
Morgan Daimler. I forgot to mention Morgan Daimler. These names are going to be
Oh,
popping in
yeah.
my head. I don't want to miss names. So your book is coming out with a ghostly, and as we said before, it's called The Christmas Card, and it's inspired by
Hmm.
M.R. James, the Messitant. And a lot, people don't understand how many people really, when they write, are writing a tribute to another author that they love, right?
Mm.
They've learned that genre from them or whatever. And it's going to
Mm.
be out in the Silent Companion any day now. We don't know the day,
Yeah.
guys, but
Very
any day
soon.
now.
Yeah.
Yes. So if someone were to look it up, they would just put the Silent Companion, and for
Mm.
author they would put the Ghostly
Yeah.
Company, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go on the Ghostly Company Facebook page website, you can click from there to the Silent Companion, and then you can look through all the previous issues and the current issue as well. I don't know if it actually says who's in it because they're slightly ambiguous with things like that until it comes out. But yeah,
Yeah, things can change so
yeah,
quickly
definitely.
in
Yeah,
this world. It's hard.
yeah.
So you do not have permission to read this whole story, but
No.
because they want to sell books. So and
Well,
you want to sell books too. So would you please read the part of it? So this one
yeah.
is by Thea herself.
Hmm. Yeah, this one is where I'm just going to find it. I've just moved it. Sorry. Right, I've got it. So my story is called A Christmas Card, and it's based quite loosely upon M.R. James's The Mezzotint, which I read a small, tiny bit of. The Mezzotint is the story of a picture that is given to an academic who the picture changes. I won't say any more than that, but it is a really good, interesting story, and it really inspired me. And
And
this story,
creepy.
yeah, yeah, and the Christmas card was actually the first story I ever wrote, inspired by M.R. James. So here we go then. By the look on her mother's face, Joanne could tell that she was either about to present her with something she'd love or tell her some good news. I was digging around an old antique shop on the Albert Road yesterday. You know, the one you're always going in? Her mother's voice was high, as though whatever it was she was going to say could barely contain itself. And I got chatting with the owner, who thought you might like this. She pulled out an old envelope from behind her back and thrust it into Joanne's hands. Joanne studied the envelope, which was clearly really old and very rumpled. The front was a lighter colour than the back, implying it had been sat unmoved in sunlight for a period. There was an indecipherable spidery writing on the front, which had faded beyond legibility. She glanced quizzically at her mother, who could barely suppress a giggle. Sighing, Joanna opened the envelope, extracting the contents. It was a Christmas card, surely a joke. Frowning at her mother, she stated, "It's an old Christmas card?" Her mother bounced up and down slightly. "Yes, look at it, look!" The front had a generic painting of a cottage, covered in snow at sunset, with smoke coming out of the chimney, and a little garden which had a small fir tree decorated with lights and baubles. It was clearly quite old. Joanne guessed about 1900s. Inside, the inscription was mysterious. Vague, Hadders, with seasonal greetings. This will keep you company over the festive period. LW. It still seemed quite a random gift, especially one to get excited about. She waited to see if her mother would give an explanation. When she didn't, she said, "I don't understand." Her mother rolled her eyes in exasperation. The man said there was a history to the card, that the owners have mysteriously disappeared over the Christmas period, and this card was the only clue. It's been in it's been in police evidence shelves for ages, and when they had to tidy up, they found it and took it to the shop, along with some other random bits of evidence from other crimes. At that moment, Joanna wished her mother had given her one of the other pieces of evidence, as they might have been a bit more interesting, but she knew her mother was just trying to please her. She smiled her best pretend smile and thanked her as sweetly as she could. Joanne was a huge fan of crime fiction and true crime, and had started trying to collect things related to real crimes. So far, she had a hanky that one of the great train robbers had used to wipe sweat off his face during the robbery, and a bullet that had been shot into a bank wall during a robbery in the local area. The card was much less exciting, and probably not anything to do with a crime at all, but her mother meant well. During the nice cream tea that followed, she had mince pies in the tea shop near her flat, and her mother looked concerned. "Are you sure you won't reconsider coming with us?" She looked Joanna directly in the eyes. "Uncle Frank would be very happy to have you stay too. It won't be any bother," she added quickly. Joanna had been quite clear, and managed to allay her mother's fears that she would be fine in her flat with her cat over the festive period. She knew that her mother worried about her living alone in such a big city, but Joanna was happy with her life, working in the library, running crime fiction book clubs, and looking after her cat, Tigger. She would much rather watch a box set of Midsummer's Murders than be bored to death at Uncle Frank's, as the adults played backgammon and ate boxes of Quality Street, slowly getting drunk on sherries and Baileys, while she, the child, would be forced to watch the light entertainment shows such as Val Doolican's Christmas. No, thank you. Not this year. As she took a leave from her mother, it started to rain, and Joanna found the card in her handbag. It could at least sit on her sideboard with her other Christmas cards, she thought, as she walked quickly back to her flat, dodging the puddles. Inside, Tigger the cat welcomed her with an amused purr, and she turned the heating on, noting the kitchen window was open a tiny bit at the bottom, and because of this it was freezing cold. She removed the card from her bag and placed it on the sideboard when she noticed something. Looking closer, she saw a small, indistinguishable figure, possibly a woman, at one of the windows. At another was a small ginger cat, a bit like Tigger. Then, rebuking herself and not noticing it before, usually her detective mind observed everything. Shrugging, she placed the card with her others. She had received 12 in total. This made 13, which, if she was superstitious, would have worried her. The already dreary day began to lose whatever light it had as she settled in for the evening. Her favourite chair, a cat on her lap, a good book, and a big mug of hot chocolate. Bliss. The book wasn't as engrossing as she thought, and she found herself drifting in and out of sleep. A sudden loud slam woke her up with a start. The cat had leapt from her lap, and his hackles were up. Her book had fallen on the floor. Stumbling, she clumsily got to her feet, her heart racing. Was someone trying to break in? She checked the clock. Midnight. God, she had slept. She surveyed the room, then checked her bedroom, the hallway, the bathroom. Everything was secure. Then she realized Tigger wasn't staring at the window in the living room as she originally thought, but at the sideboard before it. the sideboard with her miniature Christmas tree and the Christmas cards on it. Tutting, she turned back to pick up her book and dropped mug. Something caught her eye. She drew closer to the cat and tried to placate him. He was having none of it and was hissing at the card her mother had given her. She snatched it up and stared at it, open-mouthed. It was now night time, and the lights in the cottage on the card were on, glowing and reflecting in the snow. The nondescript figure she'd seen at the window had mysteriously got outside, by the look of it, by climbing out of the window, which was open. But that wasn't it. Looking closer, what took Joanna's breath away was the expression on the now obvious young woman's face, a face she noticed with a marked similarity to her own. The woman's face had a look of abject horror. Her hands were on her face. She looked like she was about to scream, as though she had seen something horrible.
And there she leaves us.
Dun, dun, dun.
And once again, bravo, Thea, bravo.
Thank
I
you.
love the story. I love the insight into people's Christmases and what happens. And I too would rather stay home and watch a box set of Midsummer Mysteries. Who wouldn't? So that brings us up to the idea of Joanna's, that, you know what? You don't have to go out, and you can have a perfectly happy holidays on your own with a good book or a good box set, whatever.
Yeah.
Just embrace that, enjoy that, buy your favorites of things and just sit
Yeah.
and relax. So
Yeah.
I'm very impressed. I'm going to have to get that to see what happens, and see how things go that way. I also wanted to mention, along with having that story that will soon be published, you have your short story, The Christmas Carolers, right? That's what it's
Yeah.
called.
Yeah.
That has been published in Moonscape, and Moonscape is free from Moon Book Publishing, and it also has a lot of other articles by other authors we've had, which I won't even start naming so I don't run into that problem again. But but yeah, so you have a ghost story out there, and people can go online
Yep.
and
Yes.
down that and read that on Christmas Eve. So
Yeah.
we've got it all down pat. Okay, so people out there, I think it's time that you collect your. Did I get to everything that I was supposed to get to, Thea?
I think so. I can't think of anything you didn't get to.
Okay, I was all over the place. I know. I was already, as Cratchit would say, making fairly merry this morning. With a ride, so I'm a little out of my part is even on the wrong side because the wind blew my hair so that it wouldn't go back again. It was stuck there. So I went through that. So people, it's time to start collecting your mince pies, baking that gingerbread, and trifle. Trifle is big. Is that big at Christmas in the UK?
Sometimes it's more Christmas pudding we have here, but that's like a steamed pudding. I don't know if you have it over there.
Yes. We have.
Yeah.
Well, it was a lot when I was growing up, and there was a lot, but it's not done. I mean, my family didn't really care for it. They're not fruitcake people, so I
Yeah.
didn't
Fair
make
enough.
it.
Yeah.
But we went to a historical. Yes, my likes are in a historical village that was having a Christmas in the village, and these two ladies made Christmas pudding, and it was just like, oh, this is so good. This is so good. So people experiment with Christmas pudding. Do the whole thing.
Make trifle. Eat Christmas pudding. Eat mince pies. Eat gingerbread. Eat whatever you want.
Just eat. Just eat. And as I was mentioning to Thea before, as I looked up information about ghost stories. And one of the reasons they gave for ghost stories is that at that time society was changing from a rural thing to a more urban, industrialized, and people were scared and they didn't know what was going to happen. So this encourages people to be distracted by other fears like ghost stories. They can put their time into that. So behind every year, people would say, there's some articles from 2017, 2011, 2020, and people would say at each article, this year I think we need ghost stories because it has been a really bad year. So remember, when you're looking in the past, look for the good things. I think it's attitude that I mean, there are some things that are very, very bad, but not so very naughty. I don't like using the words good and bad. It's
Yeah.
it's for dairy products, don't you think, Thea? And Robin did say that your reading was very lovely. Now, Robin, you're going to wonder the entire day, as I am, what comes next. I have some ideas, but I'll have to wait. I don't want to do them. So thank you so much, Thea, for joining us again. Best of luck with a guide to pilgrimage, and your new ghost story that's getting published. So
Thank you.
I love that. And thank you for reading to us. You have a lovely voice for that. We'll always
Thank you.
we'll just come back someday and put you on there with a book and say, go to it, Thea.
Yeah. Well, remember, even if you're not a fan of ghost stories, as you celebrate the season of goodwill and enjoy the festivities, as you turn on your LED lights on your Christmas tree, do remember to look in the shadows.
See, you need to put that at the end. Is that the end of the book? Now she's wondering.
No. That's in something else.
It should be. Thank you so much and have a happy holidays. And I'm just going to keep you for the ending because there's nothing about others. So, and for the rest of you, I'm going to be taking a bit of a long winter's nap after today's episode and catching up on a lot of social media and reading and just possibly staring at some walls. Life can get busy. So, and reading, yeah.
Hang on a minute. Let me get my other one up.
There you go. And reading some Christmas ghost stories as well as other stories that there's so much pop-up books. Life there's so much oh my goodness, yes, I want to read the that one. What is that one?
The Dark is Rising.
Yes, I definitely want to read The Dark is Rising. And so for everybody else, fingers crossed for peace on earth and goodwill towards men. Have a wonderful holidays, no matter how you choose to spend it. And while you're having those, I hope your coffee will be hot and your stories will be sweet. Thanks for listening, everyone. And now I just have to get I'm so out of it today. Over to the music. There we go. All right, here we go.